Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. This is my spoiler review. I have a non-spoiler review on my blog, soundedbettermyhead.com, so check that out if you want to. I ended up giving this movie a 2.5 out of 5, which seems like I give that a lot this year to movies, but I think I'm pretty happy with this number. I really don't feel like I should go any higher or any lower. I really liked The Force Awakens. I know it was derivative of really not only the original Star Wars, but also The Phantom Menace. But I really like the new characters. I love the chemistry between the characters. There was a lot of humor. And I thought just everybody meshed well together. And yeah, they were in a familiar situation, but I really wanted to see where they took these characters next. Then we got The Last Jedi, which someone pointed something out in a review I seen last year about it, or a couple years ago. It was actually a good Star Wars movie, but it was not a good Star Wars saga edition. You know, before The Last Jedi came out, I actually watched all the movies in order, and then I went and saw The Last Jedi and realized it just went a completely different direction than, you know, the way the films had been, you know, traveling at that point. And it's cool to mix things up here and there, but it was so different, not only from the rest of the saga, but especially what they established in The Force Awakens. You know, the best analogy is that you have Luke holding his lightsaber, and it kind of represented everything that J.J. Abrams had set up in the first film, and was hoping someone would pay off down the road. You know, whether it's, you know, who was Rey really? Where did Snoke come from? You know, seeing Luke train Rey and be like, you know, this Jedi Master we all wanted this, you know, him to be, you know, this and that. Well, who were the Knights of Ren? There was so much cool stuff that was hinted at, and then Luke just chucks the lightsaber behind his back, which is basically did to everything they started in the first film. And I understand all the decisions that Rian Johnson made while making this movie, and you know, they make sense, but it's just not delivering on some of the promises that were even just hinted at. So the new movie, Rise of Skywalker, kind of takes us back on track, and it does its best to try to make sense of, you know, the conflicting stuff that we got between all these movies. You know, for example, the fact that we have a main character known as Rey and only Rey kind of hints that her last name must be important because she must be following some lineage of famous Jedi or something. And then the second film said, nope, she's just Rey and her parents are losers and she's a nobody. And then this film comes back and says, well, her parents were kind of nobodies, but her grandfather was Palpatine. And I think Palpatine was one of the guesses about who she might have been related to. I think most people thought Kenobi. A few people thought still she was a Skywalker. I really did think Palpatine would have made a lot of sense for this saga. Then you also had to deal with two problems. The one is that they decided to kill Luke off, but then Carrie Fisher died in real life, so in order to make the best of the bad situation, you know, they basically reused old footage of Carrie from the previous two films, had to work it into this film to make sense. And of course, you know, you throw Luke in there as a Force ghost. And for what they were left with, I think they worked out as best they could. You know, there was a few things I think they could have been a little bit better. I thought her death was a little rushed, and it was a tiny bit ambiguous. I mean, all she did was reach across, you know, the stars with her mind and contact her son, and it shouldn't be something that should have killed her. And I was never under the impression she was that weak from anything. The whole Knights of Ren thing was a waste. You know, Abrams set these guys up. No one ever did anything with it, so he brought them back, and they pretty much did nothing. They stood around, they followed some people, and then got their asses handed to them by Kylo. Another one of the big things they had to adjust to was that they killed off Snoke last film, who was the big bad. Their solution was to bring Palpatine back. They fairly half-assed the explanation how he came back. I know there was a lot of old comic books where he had a clone and he came back, but they just kind of glossed over it, which it didn't really help the matters. They glossed over that Snoke was made by Palpatine, and we've seen him he was some kind of a clone. They never get into, you know, any of the details. This guy didn't have a whole backstory. He was very strong in the Force. So I don't know how you just make somebody that strong in the Force. And I don't know. They didn't explain it. I don't really want to try to, speculate in this video. I think that was probably the worst thing of all the stuff they tried to course correct from the last film, is the villain. As far as Palpatine being back, it's a mixed bag. He was such a classic villain, so it's nice to have that, but he just, I don't know, he just didn't have the presence that he did. He's hanging from life support. He's all bony, and he's basically trying to almost kill himself in a way to advance his cause. And even when he gets powered back up, it's still, he doesn't do much. He blasts some lightning at some ships, which was a cool look, but it really wasn't all that when it was all said and done. In his prime, this guy was one of the best lightsaber duelists there was. So I was kind of hoping he would grab a saber and go to town, but it just never happened. I mean, this is their choice, I guess. The overall story was just, I think, the weakest part of the film. It turned out to be like a fetch quest. It's like, let's go to here to get this. It's not there, so we go here and get that, and then we end up here, and it's long story short, all she had to do was go take the homing device, or whatever you want to call it, out of Kylo Ren's TIE fighter and just fly off and find Palpatine. But instead we had to go here, here, and here, and nothing really that interesting happened in all these different places. You go to the desert thing, yeah, they find this dagger, but ends up being this thing that takes them to another planet. They got to get it translated, and that really doesn't do anything but get them to the Death Star. But nothing else really that interesting happened while they're there. You met Poe Dameron's ex, whatever she was, and then the whole Death Star thing was this kind of a way. She gets the thing and then she loses it, and like I said, then she just steals it anyway with a TIE fighter. It's always cool seeing new Force abilities in these films. There's a really weird one they introduced the last film where you could see somebody across the galaxy, basically, and it looks like they're standing in the room with you, but they're really somewhere else. And to them, it looks like you're in the room with them. They try to expand on it here, where you can physically interact with items there, and you can even take something off of somebody and make it come to you, which is a ridiculously powerful thing that you can basically, it's basically like a teleportation thing. You're grabbing something from halfway across the galaxy and taking it to you. And it seemed like the only real payoff was that it was a way for her to get her saber to Kylo to help him, kick some ass at the end of the film. The Force healing thing was a cool concept, but it was kind of rushed. It's like Kylo cures Rey before she could try to save him. He just out of the blue vanishes, because she probably would have tried to give her power to him again. And then it was just kind of odd that his mom's body disappeared at the exact same time. I know they're trying to make some kind of poetic about it, but it was a little illogical, I thought. It's also strange how powerful the Force ghosts are. We've seen the last film, Yoda bringing down lightning. We've seen this film, Luke could use the Force still. You could catch physical items. So it's like, I don't know, some of these Force ghosts could have maybe went in and kind of helped out in some pretty major moments. You could have gone and Yoda could have put his spirit there on the Death Star and helped Luke fight. I know Luke had to overcome it, and maybe Yoda foresaw that he would, but I don't know, you could have pitched in a little bit more. Another thing with the Force healing, it's like, apparently this is the first time it's ever been done, because otherwise, Obi-Wan could have got saved Qui-Gon's life. There's so many instances of somebody was almost dead or dying, and a Jedi apparently always had the power to revive them. The other big thing about the new Force power is there's a lot of confrontations with Rey and Kylo, and they really work together technically. So I actually found it confusing, and I don't know if I was just confused or the filmmakers did a bad job where her and Kylo Ren fought on the Death Star. I kept thinking he was actually somewhere else, and then they were just kind of interacting. They just didn't cut back to where he was. And then eventually I finally realized, okay, I guess he's really there. It really wasn't that great of a lightsaber fight. The ending was kind of, And then just the end of the film itself, the action was stupid. It was just boring. You had just ships kind of flying around shooting stuff, and they just kind of stalled until it was time to blow up all the other big ships at the end. And that wasn't. There's no real like urgency to it. It wasn't like we got not like there was like one thing they had to stop or they were screwed. It's like, oh, we got to blow all these things up. The whole confrontation between Rey and Palpatine and Kylo was a little too metaphysical. It was just too weird to like really suck you in. Even the little ground battle to stop the ship from transmitting its signals, it was just lackluster. Just not invested in it at all. The characters themselves, this film, like I said, I really love these characters initially, and they were just bland. They didn't have any really good story arcs. A lot of like cliffhanger stuff. A lot of it looked like they were getting into maybe Finn's origin or the fact that maybe he was force sensitive. They dropped that. The female that was a stormtrooper, they maybe were gonna hint like she was somehow connected to Lando. They seemed like they just kind of dropped that, like in and out. You had a little bit of an arc about Poe becoming like the new general, and it didn't really seem like it took his character anywhere. He was like a leader for a minute, then he got all like, oh, I'm sorry, I screwed up, and then they got reinforcements, and it was all good again. The only characters that even had a real arc were, of course, the big ones, the Kylos and the Rey. But since the interaction of the characters wasn't all that great, the humor was kind of weak. The new droid, I think it's D.O., was just useless. He had no real... I mean, it seemed like he felt like he was there to sell toys. A lot of lame fake outs. You had the scene where it looked like Rey killed Chewbacca by accident. It was a very ballsy scene. I think there would have been a lot of hate from fans, because I think there are fans that hate Rey. And if she would have killed their favorite character, I think they never would have forgave them, the filmmakers. But I still think it was a ballsy choice for her character, and then her finding out her lineage, and then to just back it and say, no, actually he was on another ship. They tried to make a big deal about 3PO. He was going to lose his memory, which really wasn't that big of a deal, but at least it was a little something, being the end of this saga. And then he just got his memory restored by R2. Rey made this big sacrifice and died, and for a split second I thought they maybe would stick with it. But then Kylo ended up saving her, which I kind of thought he would earlier in the film when I was thinking about who could be saved by force powers like healing. And I said, there was a couple bullet choices they could have made, and they did these little fake outs that, being the end of a massive set of movies, it would have made sense that these characters wouldn't have made. Not everybody would make it, but like I said, there's a lot of nitpicking in this. There's a lot of spoiler stuff. It's just overall, I was so massively unhappy with The Last Jedi. They made so many choices that were just spit in the face of what they set up in the first film, and stuff that I liked. I know there's a lot of people that like The Last Jedi, and they thought it was a bold new direction. I could see where they're going with that. I thought this film just did a really good job of getting back to the story I thought they were telling, but for whatever reason, they just did not stick the landing. I think it was a combination of trying to fix too much stuff and just not having that great of a story. Abrams even said he didn't really know where the story was going to go when he made the Force Awakens. He was just kind of putting these balls into play, and they just didn't have the plan to execute, and it shows in the end. So that's really all I got to say. Everyone was really interested in the intricacies of why I gave it the 2.5 stars. Not that I don't give a lot of movies 2.5 stars, but this one definitely deserved a lower rating. But so thanks for watching.